Hi, I'm Shoshana Littman, and I'm here with a Passover story for you. It is the Passover story, and I want you to help tell it, because our sages say that the more we tell and the more we live this story, the more we are to be praised. And I'm going to give you a line to say. It's also from our sages. Our sages say that the people long ago were liberated from slavery because of the courage of women. And they add, we will be saved in the future, for the future redemption, also because of the courage of women, to open our minds from our narrow thinking to be all that we can be. So here's your line, just repeat after me. It was because of the women's courage. Your turn. And then next part, that the people became free. Your turn. All right, let's try that all together with me. Here we go. It was because of the women's courage that the people became free. And I will indicate when it's time for you to say that line. You'll say it 3 times, and the 4th time, I will say it in a new way. Okay. So, let's face it, the story of Passover, it's been around a while, so you may have heard it at least a few times before, but even so, it's good to hear it again, just in case we forget. Avraham and Sarah, Rivka and Yitzchak, Rachel, Leah, and Yaakov. From these sprang the multitude of Hebrews living in Egypt, the ones who became enslaved for 200 years. 200 years. That is a long time. And Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, he is not so dumb. He knew that after a while, such a strong people would long to go free. So he made their lives worse than miserable to break their spirit. And when that didn't work, he decreed death to their newborn sons. But 2 midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, were among those that did not comply. Here we go. It was because of the women's courage that the people became free. Shiphrah and Puah, which according to the Midrash, the stories that flesh out the Torah, they say that Shiphrah was Yocheved, Moshe's mother, and Puah was his sister Miriam. So Shiphrah and Puah said to Pharaoh, "Oi, Pharaoh, what can we do? Those Hebrew women, they're just too lively. They deliver their babies before we even get there." One such woman was Yocheved, Shiphrah herself. She hid her newborn son 3 months before Pharaoh's daughter found him in a basket of reeds in the Nile. The princess of Egypt herself reached out with her arms. Now the Midrash, those stories, tell us that her arms stretched out Gumby-like. Now our sages say if you believe all those stories, you're a fool. But if you believe none, you're also a fool. And this is here to teach us that it's so good to reach out and help others, no matter who, no matter where or when. So she reached out, she took that baby from the water. She raised him as her own son. She called him Moshe, which means he was drawn out of the water. And she called herself Bat Yah, daughter of one greater, yet more within her than any god or goddess she had yet known. Here's our line again. It was because of the women's courage that the people became free. Now, Miriam, Moshe's big sister, she was watching out for him. She had been watching out for that baby since before he was born. You see, her parents, Yocheved and Amram, they had split up when they had heard Pharaoh's decree about killing the baby boys, because they thought, well, if we don't have any more marital relations, there won't be any boys born, and so we'll be safe. And since they were leaders, everyone else split up too, according to the Midrash. But Miriam, she had a dream, a prophetic dream, because she was a Neviah, a prophetess. She dreamed that her mother would give birth to a little baby who would grow up to save the Hebrew people. So she said, Mom, Dad, you guys, you're worse than Pharaoh. You see, with Pharaoh's decree, there'll be no more baby boys. But with your behavior, there aren't going to be any girls either. And then where will we be? So Amram and Yocheved saw the wisdom of their daughter's words, and so they got back together. Since they were leaders, everyone followed their example. More babies were born. Now, thing was, the guys were exhausted from all this hard labor. So the women, they got their brass mirrors. They took their men to the orchards where they fed them fish from the river, and they looked in those shiny mirrors and said, look at this. I am more beautiful than you, which enticed the men. And so they ended up having more children. So the population grew, and so did Moses. He grew as an Egyptian prince while nurtured in the love and the stories of his people. Now, this double education made him different. When he saw the suffering of the Hebrew slaves, he helped instead of hurt them. Sometimes carried their loads, saying, oh, he was just helping Pharaoh. But one day he went way too far, and he killed an Egyptian taskmaster who was beating a Hebrew slave, buried him in the sand. Moses ran, hid in Midian, met and married Zipporah there. Now Zipporah, whose name, as you probably know, means bird, she saved Moses' life more than once. First time was when he first arrived. Her father, Jethro or Yitro, he figured, whoa, this guy's running from Pharaoh. If we shelter him, we're gonna get in trouble too. So he threw Moses into a dungeon without food or water. So Zipporah brought him food, she brought him water, she brought him words of encouragement, and eventually convinced her father to let him go. She also arranged for Moses to get a job with her father, and he looked after his father-in-law's sheep. He cared for those sheep so well, sometimes carrying them on his own shoulders, that the Holy One noticed this and thought, oh, maybe this Moses could care for my own flock too. And so the Holy One said through the flames of a bush that didn't burn, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Hineni, here I am. Moses, go back to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let our people go. So Moses did with the help of his brother Aaron. Now 10 plagues it took, awful stuff. All the water for the Egyptians turned to blood. There was lice crawling up from the sand. There were frogs jumping out of the river. There were wild beasts attacking the Egyptians, boils all over their bodies. Their cattle got sick. There were locusts eating up all their crops. Then there was hail that was both fire and ice that destroyed everything left behind by the locusts. And then, darkness so thick you couldn't move. Finally, worst of all, death to the Egyptians' firstborn sons. And Pharaoh said, enough already, go! And so, as fast as they could, Miriam, Moshe, and Aaron, they led the Hebrew people to the Red Sea. Hashem, the Holy One, parted the waters for them to cross, and then drowned the Egyptians who were following close behind. You see, Pharaoh, he kept changing his mind at the last minute, wanted his slaves back. Once safe on the other side, Moses and then Miriam led the women in a dance of celebration, and she sings to us across the ages. Be courageous. Live and tell your own liberation story. Set yourselves free. Pesach Sameach. A happy, liberating Pesach for us all.